Hey guys, it's Flo with Go Knuckle Talk with Flo, and welcome back. Let me introduce you to my co-host, Miss Lisa Hafner. Oh, Lisa Hafner. Forgot the Nolan. I forgot your maiden name, Nolan.
I know, Nolan.
But it's been a couple of weeks since we seen each other.
I know. I've missed getting together like this, and I'm glad to be back with you.
Absolutely. So let's introduce our next guest.
The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Danny Andrews. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Michael.
And welcome, sir. Welcome. We're privileged and honored to have you on our show. And,
Absolutely.
Honor's all mine.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, yeah, your article helped us with Dr. Sigler. We used a lot of your notes from there, and I thank you. I mean, actually, Lisa found it, but it was a well-written article about a man that should hopefully Plainview will someday name a street after him. I'm going to keep preaching that. So anyway,
Used to be my neighbor at one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, down the street in Southeast 6th Street.
So you grew up with his girls then?
No, I really didn't know them. They were down at the end of the block, and I guess I was probably older than them that we didn't play in the neighborhood as far as I remember.
Yeah, I think they graduated in 78 and like maybe 76 or something. Maybe.
Yeah, they'd been 10 or years younger than I was.
Yeah. Well, let's start from the beginning, Mr. Andrews. You were born in San Antonio, and I assume your notes said your dad went to Texas Chiropractic College. So when you were born, was he still a college student?
He was, and then he got out of school and had an opportunity either to go to Gonzales, Texas, or to Plainview. And so, I could have been rooting for the Gonzales, whatever they are. And he chose to come to Plainview because he grew up in Childress, so that was closer to home. And so we went up in Plainview, I think on July the 4th of 1949.
Okay. Well,
oh, wow. Cool. So were you a baby at that time?
9 months old.
9 months old.
Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a brother who is 22 months younger. He played football for the Bulldogs and some baseball. And I have a sister who just turned 84, and she was kind of like almost out of the nest by the time most of us came along. Then I have a younger sister who's 4 years younger than I am. So there were 4 of us in the family.
Okay, 2 boys. So the boys bookended by the girls.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, I mean, you consider Plainview home then?
Yes, absolutely. We moved down here in 2016 to Burleson, 11 miles straight south of Fort Worth on I-35. And I've really found a second home. Love the people down here, but Plainview will always be home. I've got my Bulldog shirt on, by the way, tonight.
I see that. That's nice.
There we go.
Why Burleson? What moved you to Burleson?
Grandkids, and our youngest son lived down here. He was working for Justin Boots at the time, and so we decided to move after we'd retired from Wayland, and really found a home. We're very involved in our church and other activities, and so it's been a great move. And I never would have dreamed of living in Burleson. I'd never heard of Burleson until Bob Cosby, who worked for Bob Gardner Chevrolet, bought the Chevrolet dealership down here probably in the mid 70s, and he no longer is here, but that's the first time I'd ever heard of Burleson, Texas. And by the way, Mark Saunders, who pardon me, did not get the job when Greg Sherwood did in 1978, wound up being the head football coach at Burleson for several years.
Oh, wow, that's a fun fact.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
a head baseball coach too.
I'm same here. I moved to Houston back in 97, I think, but I live in a small town northwest of Houston, Hempstead. It's
right.
I live 6 miles north of Hempstead, about 50 miles from Houston. So I never heard of Hempstead, in Plainview, and never thought I'd be living in a small town. But literally, I can go 30 miles, and I'm in a city. So,
what year did you graduate from Plainview High School?
We both graduated in 83.
83. Y'all are just kids.
Yes. I don't know, you may know my dad, Marshall Flores.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It
He's my
didn't
dad.
dawn on me till you sent a picture, and I thought, I know Marshall Flores. Used to talk to him all the time.
Yeah, him and he worked for Mr. Edmondson
Right.
for many years. But so let's talk about Plainview in '67. It's when you graduated. You said you played baseball and you played football, but you also worked for the Herald, didn't you?
Yeah. What happened was when I was a senior, Bob Hilburn, who was sports editor at the Herald and was my mentor, called and said, "Danny, I've got to work on the 60th anniversary edition of the of Plainview." He said, "Would you like to cover the baseball team?" Well, absolutely, and so I got to put my name in my story very occasionally. But I batted 125, was a more valuable to the team as a scorekeeper than a third baseman or outfielder. And as I said there, I have a couple of I wouldn't call them claim to fame. It would be more like things you want to forget. But I started the season in 1967 taking a call third strike from Jimmy Chenault. I didn't like the call, but he called me out anyway. And then I was the last batter of the season against Monterey. And Coach Jim Sears, who was in his first year in Plainview, comes down the line. He says, "Danny, get you a hit and end your career on a high note." So I promptly went back and struck out. So I struck out to open the season, struck out to end the season. And then I think I'm the only player that was ever pinch hit twice for in one game, and that was against Lubbock High. So my baseball career was not exactly stellar.
Yeah, you mentioned you batted below the Mendoza line. That was funny.
Yeah,
That was funny.
yeah, about 75 points below the Mendoza line. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
We have to explain that, in terms that's batting below 200. So
Right, right.
I think either some of my Texas Rangers are that we love are batting pretty close to that, including Evan Carter. And Evan was tremendous last year when he came in, but he struggled like all young players generally do. And
Yes.
of course, I played football too, and caught 2 passes for a total of 23 yards. So if Bobby Bolden hadn't been off the team for about 4 weeks, I would have never got to start 4 games. So I was a recipient of the little luck there.
Were you
But here's-
receiver, tight end, or what?
Well, we called them split end back in those days.
Okay.
I didn't like to get hit very much, so I got out on the wide side, so I didn't get hit very often.
I don't blame you. I'm sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, well, did you have a good time playing baseball and football, even though?
Oh, I had a great time. Just been around other athletes, but I did have a good year as a junior varsity player in '65. We won our district. I think we were 8-1-1. And Lubbock Coronado did not play varsity football their first season, so they came to Plainview on a Thursday night with I think there were about 4,000 people out for a JV game because they brought 10 busloads of band and fans, and then of course we had a big following, and we were leading 12-7 with about a minute to go. We had them down there on 5-yard line, and I made 3 bad plays in the last minute, and we got beat 13-12, and I was really killed over that. But then the next week, I caught a 64-yard touchdown pass, catching over the shoulder on the dead run to beat Borger. So I redeemed myself all in 1 week.
Good for you.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But if you're going to tell the good stuff, you have to tell the bad stuff too.
You have to tell the bad
Absolutely.
stuff. We can, Michael and I can relate to that because we played sports and we had good games and bad games. Hey,
Right.
I want to show Danny something really quick. Speaking of sports, so my father passed away 3 years ago, and my mom's in a facility, and we finally cleaned out their storage and we're having an estate sale. She kept every newspaper clipping, and so she was my softball coach. And so here I am right here. There's my mom right here, and we won the city league. And then look who's here.
Well, so you grew up in Plainview too, then?
I'm born and raised in Plainview. So the date on this newspaper clipping is Friday, June 24th, 1977.
Wow. So that was about a year before I got out of sports.
Yeah, so I was 12 at the time.
Yeah. All right.
But look at that baby face of yours.
Oh, I know it. I've got about that much hair still, but it's all white now, as you can
Well,
see.
hello, here you
Yeah,
go.
that's right.
And I'm much younger than you, and I'm all white. So
Now, what was your maiden name?
Nolan, Nolan.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So you were still covering when we were there. I was homecoming queen 1983, and
I just started to say you're Lisa Nolan, homecoming queen 1983. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you remember.
That's right.
So, back when you played baseball and football, it's the same, I assume it's the same stadium, of course, but did the baseball play at
JC
JC
Park.
Park?
JC
Yeah,
Park.
that ballpark opened in the late 40s as a softball field, and then they converted it. Of course, in 1952, the Plainview Ponies, which was a minor league affiliate of the Kansas City Athletics, moved from La Mesa to Plainview, and they had a guy named Frosty Kennedy who hit 60 home runs in 1956. And he told me one time, he said, "I'm the greatest player ever." And I said, "How do you figure?" He said, "Because Ted Williams batted 400, but he never hit 60 home runs. Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs, but he never batted 400. I did both." Well, there was a
Wow.
guy. There was a guy over in Roswell named Ballman, Joe Ballman, and he hit 72 home runs in 1954, I believe, and batted 401. And when I was telling him that Frosty said he was the greatest player, and he said, "Well, Frosty always was pretty confident about himself, even though Joe had a little better statistics than he did." But it
Wow.
was a great time, for a long time. The Ponies drew pretty good crowds, and of course, if somebody hit a home run like Frosty did, a lot of people would go down and stick money in the fence, and for them to come around and have a little extra spending money. So it was a great diversion in the summers.
I'm sorry, did he make the
Never made
major leagues?
Played
Oh, wow.
14 years, I think 14 years in the minors, and had some really big numbers, but never made it to the majors. He told me one time, said, in a well-lighted park, I would have hit 120 home runs. Well, Tut Tallwater, the longtime voice of the Bulldogs, told me one time, he said, the center field fence was about 350 feet away there at JC Park, and the pitching was like high school pitching. So he said,
Yeah.
it wasn't great level of baseball, but it was a lot of fun.
I never knew that Plainview had a minor league team.
I
Yeah,
didn't either.
they became part of the sophomore league, and don't let me forget, if we wander into it, I want to tell you a story about Willie Stargell playing, for the Pittsburgh Pirates, a Hall of Famer.
Mhm.
But he played in Plainview in 1960, so
Oh,
it was
wow.
one of the most interesting stories I ever wrote. In fact, maybe the most interesting story I ever wrote.
Well,
So.
well tell us about it.
Well, some guy came in on one Monday morning, and he said, "Did you see that guy from the Pirates being interviewed on Howard Cosell's show and talking about being threatened in Plainview?" And I said, "No." So I went out and checked where the Pirates were playing, and they're playing in San Diego. I called the San Diego publicist. And I said, "Where do the Pirates stay when they're in town?" He said, "The Bal Harbor Hotel." So I called, and I don't remember whether I left. This is 1982. I don't remember whether I left a specific message about why I was calling, but never dreamed he'd call me back. About 10 o'clock the next morning, the phone rings, and I picked it up, and it's a deep voice. Said, "This is Willie Stargell. I'm returning your call." I said, "Willie Stargell, I just heard that you were on Howard Cosell's show talking about being threatened in Plainview." And he said, "Yes, that was just a litany of racial incidents that happened when I was a young player." He said, "I was 19 years old. We were in Roswell or San Angelo. We moved during the year, and he said, I don't remember which team. But when we got to the ballpark, there were two white guys there, had on trench coats," he said, "and one of them at least had a shotgun. And he used a
Wow.
bad word. And he said, 'If you played it, I'm going to kill you.' Well, he went ahead and played. Well, he said, 'I don't mean to say that was the attitude of Plainview people. It's just one of the racial incidences in my life.' Well, when he died in 2004, the New York Times obituary said he was threatened by a guy that was holding a pistol. I thought, well, I got it right out of the horse's mouth. And so the other part of that story was in 2010, some people from our choir at First Baptist Church went to New York City, and we went to a place called Serendipity. And a friend of mine, Gary Lloyd, who used to live in Plainview, introduced me to this guy. He said his name is Kenny G. Well, when I got seated finally, he said, that guy was telling about playing with Willie Stargell and being threatened in Plainview. I said, "Gary, I wrote that story in 1982. And I called Kevin Lewis at the paper. I said, "Can you look at the Houston?" I think he played for the Houston Astros. And I said, "Can you look and see if they had any guy named Kenny G on the roster?" And he couldn't find one. This is a true story. And this is the crazy part about it. I'm sitting in the Sheraton Hotel on Times Square the next Sunday afternoon, and here this guy comes walking through the lobby. Well, I raced over and I said, "Sir, I met you last night at Serendipity." I said, "My friend said your name is Kenny G." He said, "My name is Ron Brand." I said, "I knew it." I said, I saw you hit a home run at the Astrodome in 1965. So, just a crazy deal. I'd written the story about Willie Stargell in 1982, and here it is, 2010, reliving the story through another guy. So yeah, that was
Wow,
probably the weirdest story I ever came across.
that's incredible. So did you
yeah.
call the New York Times to correct them on?
No, I didn't. But on that subject, a fellow by the name of I'll have to think in a minute. Sometimes when you get old like me, I forget details. But Sam Langford played 114 games for the Cleveland Indians in 1928. And when he died, we got the obituary. He ran one of the compresses in Plainview, and somebody had scribbled in the margin, said he set the major league record for throwing out 4 runners from at first base from the outfield. And I thought, well, that's strange. That doesn't hardly happen at all. You could be playing pretty shallow. Well, I called the Elias Sports Bureau in New York City, and they went away from the phone, came back and said, yes, he threw out 4 runners for against the Chicago White Sox in 1928, the last major league player to throw out 4 runners from the outfield in one game. I think it was maybe 2 at the plate and 2 at second base. I called the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper the next day. They sent me the story, and they only had him with 3 assists, not 4. So I called the Elias Sports Bureau and I said, look, I'm looking at the Cleveland Plain Dealer from that story, and I said they only have him with 3 assists, not 4. And the guy says, well, we'll stick with what we have. So I was unable to change Major League Baseball history right there.
Well, that's
What a
well,
storied career you have had, Danny.
yeah.
Well, I've
Like, well,
been very lucky. I've gotten to do a lot of things, and a lot of them, having unfortunately to get out of sports in 1978 because I got promoted to be the editor of the paper. I love sports, and as I sent some notes to Michael, George Kirk, who preceded Greg Sherwood, told me one night after we got beat by Monterey. I think we lost 3 times and tied them one time. We just could never beat Monterey. And George told me, he says, Danny, one of these days you're going to get to cover a district championship team. Well, I got promoted that summer, and Eddie Owens, who was working at the twice weekly Plainview Reporter News, I hired him as my sports editor. So he got to cover the first district playoff team. And of course, Plainview had been playing since 1910. This is 1978, had never, ever gone to the playoffs. It had some great teams, including 1945. They were 9-1, but we're in the district with Amarillo High, which was a juggernaut. And if they weren't, Lubbock High was. And so we went up, when only one team got to go to the playoffs. And so we stayed home with a 9-1 record.
That had to be really disappointing for those boys.
Well, it was. And Jack Williams, who was a great golfer later on, was on that team. He was the quarterback. And so it was, I'm sure it was a bitter pill to swallow, but just how it happened. But as I told Michael, I said, I really, when I talk about sports, I really go back to 1978. That 78 team was almost like history began for Plainview sports, because we'd had some success in different areas. But there was, Greg Sherwood brought an attitude with that team. And of course, they were great. I think Michael and I, and you and Michael and I could have coached that team in probably one district. They had so much talent on there. But there was just, it was Angry Red, enough said, and a lot of different things that Greg brought. The dot is hot, everybody had a dot on their watch. And it just turned the community around. Someone said that nothing will stir up your team, your community, like a tornado or a winning football team. And I guarantee you that the city's personal self-esteem went up about 1,000 points in 1978.
So your last year, it says here you were the sports editor in 78. So was that your last year when Sherwood started?
No, because I got promoted that summer. So Eddie Owens came in as my sports editor, and he got to cover the team. Of course, I went to all the games, and as I said in there, I was a PA announcer for a couple of years. I know, because we were playing Lubbock High one night, and the guy that was making all the tackles for Lubbock High was Danny Andrews. And so that was kind of an odd deal. So I ran down after the game and I said, I want my picture made with you. I said, I don't know many other Danny Andrewses. And so, I had a great time. I saw over 400 Bulldog football games. I think saw about 350 in a row before my string was broken. But, I was getting paid for that for a long time. So it was a lot of fun.
I assume you watched the 78, some of the players we interviewed a few months
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, I watched that podcast.
What'd you think about it? Hearing
Well,
those guys?
I tell you, to me, Scott Sherwood was like a second coach on the field. And for about the first 4 games, he and Bruce Wesley alternated quarterback. And finally, it became pretty apparent that Scott needed to be the starting quarterback, and Bruce moved to starting safety and did a great job. But you have Irvin Davis, Billy Williams, and Royce Coleman all with 1,000 or close to 1,000 yards rushing. Some good receivers, Jay at tight end, and Kenneth Story, and then that great offensive line we had with Kevin Algo kind of being the anchor of that, and then a great defense. And so it was a great year. We got beat by Midland Lee during the season, about the 3rd or 4th game. Didn't lose again until we got beat by Permian 28-0 on a nice cold day down at Jones Stadium. But we beat Amarillo High in Amarillo, and then by district, and then we went out to the Sun Bowl in El Paso and beat El Paso Isleta. And oddly enough, in 2006, the same coach was at Isleta when we played him again down in Midland in the regional area game, I guess, at that time.
Oh, wow. So he'd been through that whole thing?
I'm sorry?
So he had been coaching in El Paso?
Yeah. Trying to think of his name. Alan Sefkowitz. Alan Sefkowitz coached him for 38 years, I think.
That's incredible.
Really is.
Were you able to ever sit and talk with Sherwood? I mean, you had Eddie Owens, right?
Oh yeah, Greg. Well, Greg is a great personal friend. I talked to him a lot, and we had a great relationship. And of course, I went down and saw him before he passed away with cancer. He died on Friday night at the first football game of the season, which I thought was pretty appropriate. If Greg was going to pass, he was going to pass on football night. And there was a tremendous turnout at Broadway Church of Christ there in Lubbock for his funeral. There was probably well over 100 coaches and players. Might have been 200, but there were guys who came down from Rhode Island to see him, I think, when he was sick with cancer. That's how beloved he was. Greg cared about his players, not only emotionally and as athletes, but spiritually and otherwise. He's just a great man. I mean, and I've never seen anybody that didn't love Greg Sherwood. Well, there might have been a few, who, the kid didn't think their kids got to play as much as they should have, that sort of thing. That's always going to happen. But he was a great man.
What about O.T. Ryan, the band director?
O.T., I never had band, but, he was legendary for giving Mickey Mouse licks, And I never will forget, I wrote a book in 2014, and one of my stories in there was they used to have a pep band back in the 60s, maybe into the 70s, for basketball games. And they'd set up in the stands and play. There'd probably be maybe 20 kids. Well, they'd play during timeouts, and the Pampa coach was really mad at OT because he couldn't hear himself think. And it was either during a timeout or at the end of the game, but OT standing up in the stands, and their coach is standing down on the floor and pointing at each other and making some threatening statements. And I thought, I'd like to see him get a hold of OT Ryan, because OT had probably won the fight if they got into fisticuffs.
Great story.
Speaking of fisticuffs, in '68, I was sitting up in the stands with Carolyn, my future wife. And by the way, we'll be married 55 years on Thursday.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
She graduated in '68. So I'm sitting up in the stands covering the game, and Tommy Baker makes a breakaway to the basket. And I look down to right it, and I look up, and guys are just pouring over the railing there in Bulldog Gym. And I thought, what in the world is going on? Well, a fight broke out. And I mean, I think Lamont Beach, the principal, had either Jerry Sizemore or Lawrence McCutcheon trying to hold him back. And I mean, the fight was probably 5 minutes, but it seemed like for an hour, And that's some pretty good pretty good punches thrown, before they finally restored order. But it was, then there was always bad blood between Plainview and Palo Duro for some reason. So that's how that all got started.
So the fight was with the opposing team.
Yeah, and I certainly wasn't going to be a part of that. I was a lover, not a fighter, so I stayed in the stand for a long time.
Well, while you were sports editor, did you get along with other sports editors from the opposing towns that we played against, like Hartford and Lubbock schools, Emerald schools?
Yeah, Putt Powell was legendary at the Emerald paper, and Putt was kind of an interesting character. I don't think he liked a lot of people. I mean, he just was very opinionated, but he liked me for some reason. I mean, he'd write. He had a thing called short putts, and it'd just be like Michael Flores. Had the winning RBI against Hereford Tuesday, and Michael Flores, started out shining shoes in Plainview, Texas. There would just be some crazy stuff like that, and he'd say, like Danny Andrews is 45 years old. The world is going by way too fast. It'd be something like that, But Putt and I got along great, and there's some great sports writers in Lubbock, and we all got along just fine.
I also read that going back to the Herald, that a New York paper, New York business firm bought it out. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Hearst Corporation bought us in 1979 as a package deal.
I did not know that.
Yeah, the Midland paper was owned by, and the Plainview paper by James N. Allison, who was an old Associated Press guy, and then his son, after he died, his son and his wife took it over. And on Jimmy's deathbed, they wrote out some names of chains that they would not mind the paper being sold to, and some that they absolutely didn't want it to be sold to. And Hearst was the top bidder. Well, it opened up, guys, an incredible opportunity for me, because we got to go to the White House 3 times. We got to go see George Bush when he was running for president, when he was at down in Austin at the governor's mansion, and got to meet Clinton and Daddy Bush, and didn't get to meet Reagan. He just came in and talked to us. So I got to do things that, as a kid growing up out in Hillcrest part of town, going to Hillcrest Elementary, I would have never dreamed of getting to do those things, but only because Hearst had such great esteem in the newspaper world. And when I retired left the Herald in 2006, I was the longest tenured editor in the Hearst Corporation, because most newspaper editors either become old drunks or die at their desk, which I thought that's what was going to happen to me. I'd probably not be a drunk. I'd fall over dead at my desk at the Herald someday. But
yeah, but you said editors don't die; they just run out of ink, or the ink dries.
Someone said, you never should argue with people who buy ink by the barrel. You're going to get into newspaper people.
Before we get into your umpiring years, in your career at the Plainview Daily Herald, did anyone try to steal you?
I had a chance to go to Amarillo in about probably 74. And then in 78, 2 weeks before I got the job at the Herald, I think it was 2 weeks, the Avalanche Journal wanted me to come down, and they wanted me to be the area sports editor. And that job had been held by Walt McAlexander, who grew up in Plainview. And I think Walt was going to take a job with Lubbock Christian, I believe, at the time. They were going to pay me the same salary as the Herald, $250 a week, but I was going to get a day off. And I went to Jim Cervantes, my predecessor at the Herald, one time. I said, Jim, do you think I could get a day off? I was working about 55 or 60 hours a week. And he looked at me and said, I'm surprised you'd ask something like that. So I slunk back to my desk and never asked that again. So, I was working 55 or 60 hours a week, probably as a sports editor. Loved every minute. I'm sure I did.
Okay, cool. Lisa?
I was just going to say that, you were an editor as long as you were, probably because you were in a small town. I mean,
right.
You were in a big city like New York City, they chew you up and spit you out. It's just.
Well, I always regretted that I didn't get to work on a big paper, but I guess what I always felt like, I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond. But I loved what I did, loved the job, loved the people I worked with. Was very fortunate, was able to give a job and an opportunity in the newspaper business to a lot of young journalists who some of them had almost no experience in the newspaper business, but they wanted to come to work. And I said, I tell you what, let's give it 2 weeks and we'll know whether you can do it or not. And if not, we part friends. Well, almost every one of them worked out great because they loved people and they had a gift to write, but they had never had much experience. So that's, if I'm proud of much of anything, it'd be that, to give a number of journalists an opportunity, or at least would be journalists,
Right. So, I mean, you mentored a lot of people in your career.
At least you use that term. Man, it's interesting because I've wondered if I really mentored many people, because sometimes that's an intentionality where you're kind of going out and sitting down with them, or maybe bringing them in and let's talk about your work. Fortunately, most of the people I hired were pretty good, and that they didn't have to have a lot of editing, and so the idea of mentoring may not be the right word, but I had a good relationship. I think I fired 4 people, and it was all either because they didn't come to work or just total incompetence, So it wasn't a matter of getting excited.
But you did what I call unintentional mentoring. You mentored through your leadership and via your example.
Well, I hope so. That's what you always hope for. I always said I had an open door. I may not be paying much attention to you when you came in to talk to me, because I was probably working on another story. But at least the door was always open,
Well, you hired Randy Lightfoot, who was the sports editor.
Randy was. I called his daddy one day and I said, "Leroy, where is Randy?" And he said, "He's in Denver." And or maybe he's sitting in my living room, but in Leroy's living room. Anyway, I hired him and he worked 3 years, and he went to the Odessa paper and covered some of those Mojo teams down there. And of course, Randy was an incredible hurdler in high school, and was inducted into the Hall of Honor last year posthumously. He passed away, unfortunately. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. He ran a 13.4 high hurdles in 1971, and he got the Benrus Watch Company honored about 10 or 15 people because of doing things that had to do with time. And so they invited Randy to come. Well, we found out about 2 days before he was supposed to be in New York City that he was invited, but they didn't send him any money or plane ticket. So I called several people. I said, we need to send Randy Lightfoot to New York. And so we got him an airline ticket and a hotel, and he flew up there. And there was only about 4 people that they were being honored who actually showed up. But anyway, he was in high cotton there a little bit. So, yeah. And then Tim Sun, who's among about 200 people who are on our nomination list for the Plainview High School Athletic Hall of Honor, won the state 440 in Austin in 71. So he and Randy were both down there at the same time. And he went on to a great career at Baylor. Zoe Simpson was a great sprinter, and he went on to a great career at Rice. And so we had some really good track athletes during that period of time too, as well as the 1971 basketball team. My first basketball team to cover as sports editor went to the state semifinals down at the old Gregory Gym in Austin.
I was going to ask a question about that, but let's go back to Randy. He wasn't related to Gordon, was he?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, just curious. But who was some of the notable?
But I don't think so.
Who was some of the notable players of that 71 team?
Well, Charlie Bassett was probably the top scorer. Leroy Buckner was a big post player. Curtis Thompson, who still lives in Plainview, that's Taj Janae's daddy. Taj Janae played on state championship teams with Alicia Robertson and back in the early 2000s. And Waikisha was a trackster at Wayland, and their brother, whose name is suddenly Curtis. No, was it Curtis Jr.? Anyway, he was a good athlete. So the family was very bunch of very talented athletes. Willie Carruthers was a point guard, and in Austin we played Cypress Fairbanks out of Houston. That's close to where you are.
Yes.
And 3 of the guys all missed 1-and-1s in the last minute and a half of the game. We got beat by 3 points, but we were down 18-6 early, and it had rained. I mean, a torrential rain downpour between the first semifinal game and ours. And just as Curtis Thompson shot and hit a shot off the wing, the referee waved it off because he saw a puddle of water on the floor. I thought Bill Phillips was going to have a stroke. And anyway, we came back and we got beat by 3 points. And then Cypress Fairbanks went on and beat Houston Wheatley for the state championship the next day.
Oh, man, that could have been a possibility.
See, back in
Well
those
said.
days too, Plainview we beat El Paso Bowie, and then we beat Wichita Falls Rider in Abilene the previous week at Abilene Christian on Saturday. We played 2 games. We played one in the morning, one in the evening. Well, now they're split up, where you play on consecutive days, so you're not able to play 2 games in one day. But those are great games.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your umpiring career. Why? I mean, why did you,
I don't know.
for 20 years?
Yeah, Jim Farrell, who was the former longtime Chamber of Commerce manager, was umpiring, and in fact, he drove me to some of the games over there by Estacada. We were playing on fields over there by Estacada Junior High, and I just got to call and loved it. And Lou Ballington, who was a postman, he and I called every night, 4 nights a week, two games a night for probably maybe 3 or 4 years. I don't know, but we called nearly every Babe Ruth game. That's just kind of where I got assigned. I worked some Little League games. In fact, I worked a perfect game one time for a Little Leaguer. You remember the Chavez boys? Did you know them? Adam and Valenti and Oscar and
Yep.
And those guys. Anyway, Adam, I think Adam took a call 3rd strike to finish the perfect game. But first time I saw Adam, he was about 10 years old. And he walked up. He says, "I'm Adam Chavez. I'm the one that hit the triple." I thought, yeah, okay, that's great, But those guys were all great players. They could have. Wally was their brother that played second base, but they could have.
No, I know Wally. Wally's 80, like a year or 2 younger than us, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wally, I know. Wally, I do recall. So I was going to ask you a memorable pitching game, but what about a game?
Well, in the most memorable game I ever called in high school was Donnie Moore, who wound up pitching for the Chicago Cubs and the Cardinals. Donnie gave up a home run for the Angels against Boston in '86. If the Angels win the game, they're going to go to the World Series for the first time. He gives up a home run and unfortunately took his own life several years later. But Donnie played at Lubbock, Monterey. So this is '72, and he and Clint Wall, who still lives in Plainview, has High Plains Concrete. Yeah. Clint's a left-hander. He pitched a little at Tech. They faced each other. It was an 8. Monterey beat us 1-0 in 8 innings. I'm working the plate. I don't know if I saw any of Donnie Moore's pitches. They were had such speed, I think I just called him by the sound, And anyway, they beat us 1-0 in the 8th inning, and that's probably the best high school game I ever called. And I worked a couple of playoff games. We played Abilene Cooper, I think maybe about 1981. I think when John Hill was coaching there, we won a district championship, or at least went to the playoffs. But I had a great time. In fact, I called the Southwest Regional Babe Ruth tournament for 13-year-olds in Pampa in 1981, and I worked the tournament in Austin in '82. Then we hosted the tournament in '83, and I thought I was going to call in it, and it turned out I had not taken the national test, so I couldn't call in. They said, "Well, why don't you take that test and write quick, and we'll send you to Miami, Oklahoma, and call the tournament." And I said, "I think I'll just wait and work the tournament here," as one of the officials. Didn't umpire. But we had, we started, Michael, in 1977. We hosted our first Southwest Regional tournament, and then we hosted probably 10 tournaments through the years, either Babe Ruth or Cal Ripken. So Plainview was a place to come and play baseball.
Baseball, yeah. I have a naive, it's a stupid question because I don't know. I mean, I know the game of baseball, but I don't know umpiring. Right. So were you always behind the plate, or did the umpire rotate?
No, I worked the bases some, and we just alternated. But see, back in the '70s, we were playing 2:30 double headers on Tuesday. So one time, and this is my Eddie Owens story, I couldn't find another guy to work with me. I called every umpire in town, and they were all busy or out of town or something. So I got Eddie, who was the sports editor at the Reporter News, out of the stands. I said, "Eddie, I got to have you work the bases." I said, "Look, I'll help you." I said, "You won't have one tough call." He must have had 4 in the first 2 innings and blew every one of them. And I looked at the Lubbock. I told the Lubbock guy coach, what our situation was. I mean, he's white as a sheet.
Yeah, that's funny. There was a couple other notable umpires. Dotson.
Buddy Dodson
Uh,
and Jimmy Chenault.
Yeah, but I remember Buddy, he called several of our games, and
Oh yeah.
we're playing Monterey, and I don't know who was behind the home plate, but Coach Megal was not happy with the umpires calling of strikes and balls. And he looked at Coach Hill. He goes, "I know you have Buddy Dotson available. Why is he not calling behind the play?" I'm like, "Oh wow, he knows Buddy." So it was pretty.
There was only one or two other guys. Well, probably three or four other guys who called. But yeah, Bobby and I had our run-ins. And in fact, I ran him out of a game one time in '77, I believe it was. But he wrote me a nice note. I wrote him a note. He's in the Hall of Fame, the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. Wrote him a nice note, and he sent me a nice note back. And he said, we always got a fair shake when we came to Plainview, So, but he's a great coach. He was tough, He was tough on his players.
Yeah.
Great coach.
Well, I'm going to repeat this because we're going to have some other baseball team for another show, but we swept them. We beat them in a doubleheader in '82, the first time in school's history.
Yeah.
Well, I met up with a couple of players my freshman year at JUCO, and they said when they got back to Lubbock, Coach Megan said, "Go to the showers." No, he ran them until they dropped and started throwing up. He was so mad that we beat him in a doubleheader.
Yeah, I think I was out there the day. Who had been pitching for y'all?
Maybe Alton Jackson Jr., Kevin Mosley, David. I think David Pena pitched one game.
I think I had quit umpiring in high school maybe the year before that because I think I remember seeing that y'all swept them, which was unusual. When they first started playing, they were playing out there at Estacado, right behind Bulldog Stadium, and there was not a fence out there, and I think Plainview hit a ball out there and it went out in the street, and I don't know whether they had to retrieve it or whether there's a ground rule that said we got in the street, to double. Anyway, Plainview I think beat them out there at that old Estacado field one time.
Yeah,
but it was pretty rare to beat Monterey for a long time. But
absolutely,
it's always fun when we did.
Oh yeah, a fun fact about Estacado: we faced a guy named Wayne Dobson. He threw like mid-90s. Well, he got drafted in '83 by the Detroit Tigers. Yeah. He didn't make it. I think he played a couple years in the minors and blew his arm. But I told the guys he got drafted before Roger Clemens.
Wow!
And that year.
Well, of course, Plainview's claim to fame baseball-wise, I guess, would be Willie Ainsley.
Mm-hmm.
And Willie could hit the ball. The legendary story is they're playing up at Amarillo High on a windy afternoon, and they played on a Monday. Well, the scouts weren't there. The major league scouts weren't there because they didn't know they were playing the Monday game, and then they were playing Tascosa the next day in Amarillo. Well, Willie comes up, and I don't think he'd mind me telling. He went up and hit that ball into the middle of the street of Bell Avenue, and it bounced into some apartments across the street. Well, Carl Holland, whose son Petey was on the team, this is in '88, goes out and measures it at 596 feet where it landed from home plate.
Wow.
And I was visiting at a nursing home one day, just happened to tell that story for some reason. And there's a guy in the nursing home said, I was at that game that day. So, what happened was the Tascosa guys were sitting in the little low risers around third base. And when Willie comes around to score on the home run, they all fall off the benches and bow into him, like this guy is unbelievable.
Jeez.
And, went on and played number one draft choice of the Houston Astros. Mm-hmm. And I had a scout tell me later on, Willie hurt his knee. And he said, I think if Willie had really properly rehabbed his knee, that he said, I have no doubt he'd been the starting center fielder for the Astros. But he never had a major league at bat in 10 years. Yeah, so that's kind of sad.
It's sad.
And great football. Well, he's a great football player and a great basketball player. And of course, his brother Rod was scored 52 points against Hobbs in 1996 as a sophomore. So he has a school record for most points in a basketball game.
Yeah, I was going to say he beat he was our age, Gil Wright's record
Yeah.
against Coronado.
Yeah, Gail scored 47 against Coronado, and then
Yeah.
and Rod's 52 is a school record now.
Wow. Well, what about your grandson's Tiger League game at age 71?
Well, there's two different stories. In about 1992 or 93, we go to the Tiger League football game. I knew we were going to be late, and we walk in and they're not playing. I said, "What's going on?" I said the referees didn't show up. I said, "Give me a whistle." And I thought I'd seen enough football games. I knew the signals. And so we had three young guys, and they'd called, but they'd never been the referee. I said, "Okay, two things. You guys carrying the chain. Don't move till I tell you. And the rest of us, let's keep our flags in our pocket as much as we can." Well, 5 minutes into the game, one of the young referees comes over and he said, he threw his flag. I said, "What do you got?" He said, "Well, I think they looked like they were trying to, like a hidden player, kind of like he's standing on the sideline, but he's really on the field." He said, "I think he's got to be 10 yards off the sideline." I said, what's the signal?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "How about this?" Started patting my head and rubbing my stomach, and I didn't show that to the fans, but anyway, we got through the game. But then 4 years ago, 6 months after I had a heart attack, I'm at my grandson's football game, 7th grade football game here in Burleson. Cold, rainy night. The referees don't show up. So I went down and told Karsten, I said, "Tell your coach if he needs me to referee, I'll referee the game." So he loaned me his whistle, and I got the Fort Worth Brewer coach to watch one sideline. I got one of the daddies to watch the other sideline, and we got through the game. I'm hobbling out there with a bad knee, and 6 months after a heart attack, and I thought, this isn't the smartest thing I've ever done, But how many kids can say my 71-year-old granddaddy refereed my football game?
That's funny. So what is a proper call for that play? For the player standing by the sideline?
I patted my head and rubbed my stomach.
No, but what is?
I don't know. I don't know.
I wonder if it's illegal formation.
Yeah, it probably is.
Anyone out there, please post.
Like illegal shift or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what
on one of your notes I read against Amarillo High. You mentioned there's a World War II veteran that he really didn't appreciate our anger red dot.
Yeah, we before we played Amarillo High, Jim West, who was the longtime Southwestern Bell manager, we went down to his office one afternoon, and he got a bunch of paint sticks and then white cardboard, and put red dots. I guess we had some kind of a deal to put them on there, and then spray painted red dots on the white cardboard, and then tacked them stapled them onto the paint sticks so the fans could hold them up when they came out, the big red dot. And this World War II veteran told me, he says, "Man, I tell you what, I served in Japan during World War II." And he said, that was a little unsettling to see all those red dots go up, when we came out. So just kind of a little sidelight to that story.
Oh, man. And then you mentioned Kenneth Cummings' story.
Yeah, just a track story. 1972, Kenneth was going to compete in discus down at Lubbock. And of course, the top two get to go to state. Well, he's waiting for the coach to come pick him up, and he didn't come in. Of course, way before cell phones. So he runs down to Davis Horn's house, calls the coach, gets him out of bed. He comes, gets him there just in time to compete. He didn't even get to warm up. He finishes third. Now, would he have finished second or first if he got time to warm up? Who knows? Anyway, I felt like I need to report that the coach didn't get him there and called him by name. That's the night that the tornado hit Plainview in 1973 and blew newspapers from here to Kingdom Come. So Jim Pollard, the athletic director, never saw that story. Otherwise, that coach might have got fired. So a tornado might have saved his job.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's wild.
My gosh.
Lisa?
I remember that tornado. I want to go back to your time at the paper. Did you have any interesting interviews, famous people, or influential or impactful interviews?
I was very fortunate. I sent Michael a list there about.
I
just kept a list just for fun. I think I've gotten to be in, and I'm not talking about just going to like a pro football game, said, okay, I saw, Roger Staubach play, and I put his name down. I'm talking about people that I felt like either got to interview, got to see in person with some kind of a relationship. Maybe 400 people, and some of those people, if you saw the list, you said, I never even heard of those people. That's part of my list. But I got to interview Steve Martin when they did Leap of Faith in 1992 there in Plainview. They were shooting the movie Leap of Faith. Got to interview him for about 15 minutes, and really a nice guy. The kid that played on the Rifleman for years, Johnny Crawford, got to interview the lady that played Corbeth Godsey on the Walton. She was at the Fair Theater. Michael, you probably have to remind me of some of those.
Oh yeah, you mentioned Dan Reeves.
Yeah,
You
Dan
call
Reeves.
him but you call him a prima donna. But I'll let you finish that part.
Well, he was my first big interview. I got to interview him up at the Tuya Athletic Banquet, and he'd forgot that we were going to have an interview. So we stopped out under the parking lot light, and he had a film with him. And so I got the film and wrote my notes on it. And so I called him the prima donna running back. I thought that was a compliment. And prima donna, means basically a show off. And Bob Hilburn changed that to premier. So it saved me from some embarrassment, in the story. But Tom Landry came to Plainview to First Baptist Church to give his testimony one Sunday night about 1975. So I was going to take his picture when he left. And this kid runs up and has a football and sticks at him. And he says, put Bob Hayes' name on there. Well, Bob Hayes, of course, was the Olympian who was a great wide receiver. And Landry kind of grinned. He said, well, my name's Tom Landry. He said, I don't care. Put Bob Hayes' name on there.
So I was going to ask you, did he or did he decline? Do you remember?
I think he just laughed and went on. But I got to meet Hollywood Henderson at the Coaches All-America game they had in Lubbock for about 6 years. Terry Bradshaw came and spoke at First Baptist for father-son banquet in 1971, right after his rookie year. And I've got Bob Lilly. I met him at the Spencer Theater over in Ruidoso because Wayland's theater people were putting on a program, and he was sitting right behind me. So I said, would you come up to our reception for the cast? And he said, well, I've got some friends. I said, well, bring them. Well, the kids didn't know Bob Lilly from Adam. He was the first draft choice of the Cowboys in 1960. But
Mr.
he was a
Cowboy.
Dallas. Yeah, Mr. Cowboy. He was so nice, and the kids all, were really impressed to meet a Dallas Cowboy.
Well, you mentioned J.W. Bailey, Linda Blair.
Yeah, Linda Blair was in The Exorcist. I met her in Los Angeles along with Rich Little, the impressionist, who can impersonate anybody. And I just guys, I was very, very fortunate. One thing, I'm not afraid to talk to anybody, and that if you're not, you can meet a lot of people and find some interesting stories. But also, just because the Hearst Corporation gave us a lot of opportunity we wouldn't have had otherwise. And I served on some state boards that opened some other doors. So it's I've just been very, very fortunate to get to be in the presence of a lot of interesting people.
Yeah, you were continually Sharon Stone. Bill
Sharon
Cosby.
Sharon Stone, the actress, was married to our editor out in San Francisco for 5 or 6 years, and he brought her to the retirement reception for our head of newspapers. We didn't get to meet her. He just kind of brought her around and brought her to the retirement reception. So at least we got to see her, but he didn't introduce any of us.
Yeah. Well, I read about Jimmy Dean and his wife that you asked him to donate 25,000, but he ended up donating. I'll let you finish it.
Well, I had done a story on their book. It's called 30 years of sausage, 50 years of ham, meaning, being an actor. And so they wrote that book in 2004, and I did a big feature on it. Well, when I went to Wayland, I thought, well, I'm going to write and see if he might do a scholarship in honor of his mother, who cut hair to kind of keep the family going with 2 boys. And nearly every man of that age said, oh, yeah, Ms. Dean used to cut my hair. And anyway, she taught Jimmy how to play the piano and maybe even the accordion. And so I just wrote and I said, would you be interested in doing a scholarship in honor of your mother of $25,000? And it's a one-time deal. You don't ever have to put another penny in. We just use the interest. Well, when he finally decided, he said, "I want to give you $1 million," and his wife was influential in that. He thought he might give it to the city or give it to Seth Ward. And Donna said, "Jimmy, you like education. Why don't you give that to Plainview?" And he did. Of course, in 2001, the Plainview High School gave him his honorary, more or less an honorary diploma, because he had dropped out of school to go to the Merchant Marines when he was 16, and then he joined the Air Force at 18. But he had a fabulous career. You know, a lot of younger people like y'all probably barely hardly know that he was ever an entertainer. And of course, had the number 1 song in the country, "Big Bad John," in 1960. And I have written a one-man play about Jimmy Dean. I don't know if it'll ever go anywhere, but I've got it out of my system anyway. Just trying to hear his story, and I went back and read his book again and tried to include a lot of the information that. But you know, he had several television programs, several top 10 records, and very successful in the sausage business. You know, so he was
Yeah,
very interesting.
he was in the movie with Roger Moore, the
with
007 movies.
with Sean Connery in 1971.
Was it Sean? Okay,
yeah,
my bad. I'm sorry.
Diamonds are forever. He played a
Yeah.
reclusive billionaire by the name of Willard White. So, but he said he sat around the hotel in London about half the time, and Jimmy's a very impatient guy. And he said he'd have to sit around the hotel and waiting for them to shoot some of his scenes, you know. So he wasn't really impressed with the movie business, I don't think.
That's funny. Well, you said something that jumped out at me. I know all about Jimmy Dean. I
Yeah.
grew up in Edmondson.
Yeah.
And anyway, you said that you talked to everybody, and I have found that, you know, if you are just an authentic and genuine human being and don't act like a starstruck fool,
Yeah. Right.
and just treat people like a normal person, then people who are celebrities in whatever field, whether it's sports or entertainment, that they actually really welcome that and have a tendency to be more open to somebody who is not starstruck.
That's probably true, but let me tell you a story about in '93. Carol and I went on a cruise down to Catalina Island and then down to Ensenada, Mexico. Well, we're at the Los Angeles airport, and I see 3 people walking together. Told Carolyn, I said, that one guy's an actor. So when they got to the baggage claim, I went over and introduced myself, and the guy said, "I don't think I know you." And I said, "Well, I think I know you." Anyway, he said his name was Wings Hauser, and he'd been in some movies, but I hadn't seen any of them. And he said, "This is Linda Blair from The Exorcist," and he was dating her at the time. And she's about 5'4", you know, and she stuck her hand out. And he said, "This is Rich Little." Well, Rich Little had been on Johnny Carson's show 1,000,000 times and could imitate anybody in the world. And he had real sweatback, black, greasy black hair and dark sunglasses and looked like he'd been in a tanning bed for about a month. And I was starstruck. I said, "Mr. Little, I'd just like to say, of all the talent I've ever seen, I'd like to have yours, because to be able to imitate other people believably is just fascinating to me." And to a total stranger, Lisa, he says, "Well, man, I wish you had my problems too." So,
Oh, geez.
so you think
Yeah.
he'd say, "Well, thank you. You know, that's very nice of you to say," or something. And a friend of mine, a Christian comedian named Dennis Swanberg, who's been out to Plainview to do some programs, met Lee Marvin, who was you know, in the Dirty Dozen and shows. He met him, and he was a pastor. And he said, "Do you have any relationship with Christ?" He said, "No, man. I just try to keep myself out of situations I can't deal with on my own." Well, it's again, you know, to a total stranger, they may say something that they might not otherwise say to a reporter or whatever, you know. But he just, and what he just says that those people are also real people who have real problems, you know.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Which point's well
Absolutely.
taken, Lisa.
Yeah.
And then I think this is fascinating. You met Arthur Ashe at the airport in '89.
I'd gone down to Beaumont. They had asked me if I would be interested in being the publisher of the paper, which means the overall head of the paper. And I would have been a duck out of water because I didn't know anything about business, and that's an important part of making money through ad sales and all that. But I was sneaking around. I went to Beaumont and San Antonio, just seeing what it would be like to be a publisher. Well, you're not going to find out till you get into that job. But I was trying to see what that entailed. Well, I get off the plane at DFW and I start to walk to the curb, and Arthur Ashe, the tennis player, standing there. by the way, the guy who did the statue of Jimmy Dean in the Jimmy Dean Museum is the same guy that did the statue of Arthur Ashe, and name is DePasquale from Richmond, Virginia. But anyway, I just slowed down and kind of cocked my head and I said, "Sir, if you're not Arthur Ashe, you're missing a golden opportunity." He kind of nodded like, "I know that, and you know that, but please don't call any attention to me." I go into the gift shop and Tony Dorsett's standing there. Well, Tony Dorsett had been traded to Denver. And in a minute, I go out and he's standing out there on the concourse and people walking by and never even slowing down. I thought, didn't take long to be forgotten in your old town where you were a superstar with the Cowboys, you know. But I got to meet those guys within 5 minutes of each other.
Oh, geez.
So that's why I was saying I'm so lucky to, you know, just happenstance, some things that have happened to me that, I couldn't have dreamed up, you know.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Wayland and the affiliation with Wayland.
Well, Hope English, who was in what we call dummies geometry class in 1965, spring of 65, I believe, at Plainview High School. She was a longtime teacher there in Plainview, headed the gifted and talented program at Ash for a long time, probably when you went to school. Did you go to Ash?
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
So Hope was there. And in fact, her oldest son is the golf pro at Shady Oaks in Fort Worth, where Ben Hogan played. And so anyway, she said, "Danny, why don't you apply for that alumni director's job?" Joe Providence, who'd had the job for 24 years and was really an icon at Wayland, was retiring. And I said, "I don't know. I'll probably drop dead at the Herald one of these days." And I thought, at 58, if I'm going to make a career move, I better make it now. And so I did, and spent 10 and a half years out there, and was fortunate enough to get the dean gift, which eventually led to Donna Dean, his widow, giving us $5 million to build a museum, which is a absolutely fabulous museum there. If you've never seen it, I sure encourage you to do that. And then just recently they made the announcement of the largest estate gift in the history of Wayland, and that won't probably happen until Ms. Dean passes away. She's remarried. But anyway, it'd be a really very substantial gift. So my point about all that was that I just laid the groundwork. I was lucky enough that Jimmy responded positively. Then some other people did some other work, and Mike Melcher, who applied for that same job that I did, but was hired as a fundraiser, he and I became like brothers almost. Just one of the finest guys I've ever met, and he kind of followed up on a lot of the things that have happened with the deans subsequent to my involvement. And then we raised a lot of money for an all Steinway project where Wayland would have all Steinway pianos, about 24, I think. And I raised a substantial amount of money with some friends through that, and then some scholarships. But if I had been a really good fundraiser, I probably would have stayed at Wayland a few more years, but I wasn't. So I thought maybe it's time to retire and go chase grandkids or something like that. So that's what we did.
Well, speaking of the Melchers, Lisa and I met them. You remember Lisa?
Yes.
They end up buying the president's house and turned it into a bed and breakfast. We
Mike
were
and
the
Deb.
last. We were their last group because last year was a 40th reunion, high school reunion, and I rented the house with Lisa and some other Andrew Dunlap, Gwyneth Dunlap. They stayed at the house, and we were their last group for the Melchers until they turned it over to the girl from California. So
yeah, and she's done a great job too. So that's a neat place. We stayed there back in Wayland Homecoming back in February, and it's really nice. But the Melchers did a great job getting it into good shape, and it's a real asset to the community.
Yeah, it
so
really is.
I signed their guest book. I signed all of our names, and I wrote the Big Chill of 1983. So no.
I have a question. So what exactly does an alumni director do? Can you elaborate a bit about what that detail?
Well, my title was alumni development, which meant I was supposed to try to raise money with former students. And when I came, Wayland was trying to start a capital campaign, and that was 2008 came along with the downturn in the economy. And so we kept putting it off, and now they've have really done well in the last couple of years. In fact, the new math and science department at Wayland is just beautiful, fabulous. And so, and there's some other projects going on. And by the way, Dr. Donna Hedgepath is going to be taking over from Dr. Bobby Hall as president at the end of the month, I believe. And she is just a dynamic person coming from Campbellsville, Kentucky, and has wonderful ideas. And of course, I've known Bobby Hall since he's a little boy, because his brother Tom and I broadcast Wayland Plainview football for 11 years. And of course, I'd done 3 years with Mike Fox back in the early 90s. And then Tom and I started doing Wayland football, and he kept it about 3 years. He said, I think I'm going to give it up. So I broadcast Wayland football, basketball, and baseball for about 3 years, and had a wonderful time doing that too.
That's wonderful.
And then Garrett Von Netzer at the Amarillo paper and I, 50 years ago, started Panhandle Plains Basketball Magazine, which is a preseason outlook magazine, which just celebrated its 51st year. We sold it. I sold my part out about 2011, but the owners sold it out to the people that put out the football magazine, and I don't know where it's going to go from there. They kind of struggled with it last year, but we were proud because we knew football was the king in Texas, but we thought basketball needed to have some notoriety, so we put that magazine out for it lasted 50 years anyway.
Wow, that's incredible. I did not know that.
Absolutely. Wow.
And Garrett and I were lucky to go into the Panhandle Press Hall of Fame up in Amarillo at the same time in 2004. And he lives down in Fredericksburg now and has a sheep operation, but he was a legendary sports writer up in the Amarillo paper for a long time, and then became the chief executive officer of the Amarillo paper eventually. So we kind of started out as young sports writers. Poverty will motivate a lot of things. I always said we were young, poor sports writers in more ways than one. In fact, somebody said, did you know what you wanted to be early? And I said, yeah, I said, I want to be a sports writer in the worst way. And someone said, well, you certainly succeeded at that. So a little smart aleck,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Danny, what do you miss the most about Plainview?
Oh, friends and just the association with sports. Getting out the baseball field, there is a Taj Mahal nearly. That is a beautiful facility right next to the football stadium. And they're still using, I think, JC Park for some, and of course they changed it to Bulldog Park for some maybe JV games and things of that nature, maybe where there's a conflict of it's same day. But that new ballpark is all turf, as is the girls' softball field. And so a lot of wonderful things going on there. Jonathan Haddock is the athletic director, and very, very fine young man. And got them off to a good start last year. They kind of faltered at the end, and I think wound up 5-5. But hopefully they're going to get on the right path and bring back some of the glory days of Bulldog football. And of course, talking about those glory days, Jamar Wall back in 2005. I mean, you talk about a tremendous athlete, that Jamar, and then he went on and played 9 years in the Canadian Football League. Mm-hmm. So Plainview's had, between Lawrence McCutcheon, who played for the Rams, Jerry Sizemore for the Eagles for 14 years, and Bill Houghton, who played for the Packers and then the first 4 Cowboy teams, and Arlen Thompson played pro football, and several others. We've had some. Kenneth
Stewart played for Chicago. Bears.
It did he?
I
was just knew that. Yeah.
So were you
with the Chicago Bears?
Were Sizemore and McCutcheon, or were you already?
No, Jerry was a sophomore when I was a senior, and he was a center that year. I don't even know whether he started, but I know one day he got into it with the quarterback Ronald Kirsch, and I thought, man, Kirsch, you have had it now. And Ronald popped him in the nose, and that was the end of that fight. Jerry was a kind of a gentle giant, but he was incredible. He was two-time All-American. It's sad he's in the College Football Hall of Fame, but neither he nor Lawrence, who was a great running back for the Rams. He had over 6,000 yards in his career. Neither one of those guys are in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. It's particularly Jerry, that he would be in the College Hall of Fame, but he's not even in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame down at Waco. Wow. So it's hard to get in.
Absolutely. Let's talk some of your articles, like controversial articles. Did you write any that got under people's skin there in Plainview?
Yeah, I got a letter. I've gotten a joke about it now, but the MHMR Center and the hospital were kind of sideways back in the early 80s. And somebody wrote me an anonymous letter and said that we were trying to drive a wedge between the two organizations. And this is what they said: it was a sad day when you were named managing editor. A boy trying to take a man's place. Bring back Jim Servetus. Well, a boy. I was 31 years old, but and then I got a letter to the editor one time from a guy who said that Danny Andrews is a rich white elitist. I didn't respond to letters to the editor. I said Danny Andrews only admits to being white.
Oh man.
And I had a guy come in one time, and I thought he was going to whip me. He wanted me to hold out his marriage license out of the newspaper in the public records. And I said, sir, when we publish one, we publish them all. He said, you can hold it out if you want to. And I said, well, I guess I don't want to. And I thought, hope he didn't come over the desk and punch me out,
Why did he want you to hold it out?
I guess he just didn't want anybody to know he's getting married to somebody else, I said, well, go up to the Tulia paper, get it, take out your marriage certificate at whatever in Tulia. And I said, but they might run it too. So he walked away. He wasn't very happy, but he walked away anyway.
Oh,
but I guess the craziest letter I ever got is after I left Wayland. I got a letter two consecutive Decembers, and I think it was from an elderly lady. And the second time we had moved, and so she got the letter back, and all she did was just write the new address out in the margin, and I guess stuck another stamp on there and sent it back. It said this: why do you have to be front and center in the choir at First Baptist Church? Are you as unhappy as you look? You need to wear looser fitting clothes. You need to smile more. And I thought, well, most time when you're on TV, like our services are, and they show the choir, we don't look real happy, But I thought, I must have offended that lady someplace, but I have no idea who it was. Well, Jack Loftus was the editor of the Houston Chronicle, the largest paper in the state. His father went to prison in the 30s for bootlegging. When he got off the train in Hillsborough, someone said, Henry, so you going back to Huntsville anytime soon? He said, not unless it's for singing too loud in the church, First Baptist Church choir. So I said, well, if he did, I hope he smiled a lot and wore loose-fitting clothes. What a strange letter,
A strange letter.
Somebody said, you get a lot of critical letters at the Herald? I said, I got more critical letters for being in the choir at First Baptist Church than I did for being editor of the paper.
Anybody ever send you a threatening letter? Were you ever threatened?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And you were asking about stories. Two stories I really was proud of. Clay Warren, who's Mark and Frida's son, died 2002, I believe. He'd gone to Tech and they had a wreck and he died, and they donated his organs to and so the guy that got his heart and a guy that got, I believe, his liver or a lung, both came to Plainview and met the Warrens. And so I did a story about that and won an award for that. And I did a 13-part series about the problems in the hospital, which was back in the early 90s, I believe. The hospital was going through a lot of changes and a lot of upheaval. And then I also did a story about when we redistricted the schools back in the 70s. That created a lot of turmoil in the community, and I did a retrospective on that, probably, I don't know, around 2000 maybe, or maybe late 1990s. But it was where I do a lot of research, and talk to a lot of people, where I had to spend quite a bit of time doing the story. But I said so one time, if I had a nickel, if I had a penny for every word I've ever written, I'd be a millionaire by now, billionaire maybe.
Well, you mentioned the schools. Lisa and I class were the first class at Lakeside at 5th grade.
Yeah.
And and then last year we heard that they were going to demolish it. So during our reunion, about 100 of us went there and got a photo taken. Yeah. So, and the paper, Plainview Daily Herald did an article about us.
Yeah, they I think they're going to tear down the old Hillcrest. There's a nice building that they've already torn it down.
It's gone. So is Edgemere.
Yeah, Edgemere
and Lakeside, it's all gone.
Yeah, it's just like a parking lot. But they built a really nice building out there at Hillcrest that they're going to, I think, continue to use because it's not that old. And then they were finishing up the remodeling, I think, at La Mesa last year and moving back into it. So but those three elementary schools are really, really nice. They're very impressive looking. And, Plainview's got a wonderful aquatics park now, swimming pool and splash pool and everything. And so there's some really positive things going on in Plainview, I think.
Yeah, the revitalization of downtown, that
Yeah.
really makes me so happy, because there was a time where I thought, oh my gosh, my hometown has turned into a ghost town, and it was really sad.
Well, I'll tell you what, Phyllis Wall, who I don't know if you know Phyllis, but I give her a
Yes.
lot of credit. She is a driving force in that community for good. And she's encouraged a lot of people to invest in downtown and in other projects around town. So she's really really deserved a lot of credit for what goes on there. And there's been some new restaurants, and the Hilton Hotel is nice, and I never thought I thought they'd have to tear that down eventually, but they went in and remodeled it, and it's very nice. So as I said, and of course the city is taking over the old bank. The Hale County State Bank is their city offices now, and so again, lots of good things going on.
So what do you think whenever the county went wet?
Oh, some of my friends were behind that, and the claim was that was going to really help Plainview. I don't think even they would probably admit that it had that much of a real positive effect on the community in terms of the financial resources. But that's the change of life, and it's pretty much inevitable.
Absolutely. Well, Miss Lisa, anything else?
No, I think we've covered a lot of things about your life that have been really, really interesting.
We didn't talk about just briefly about the Wayland, basketball programs, the Flying Queens. I got to cover them for 11 years.
Yes, yeah, we wanted to talk about that. The Queens Classic.
Oh yeah, 29 years, and Jim Farrell and Tom Hall saw a little bit of every one of the over 600 games in 29 years. And of course, that was all during Thanksgiving weekend. And so they were being paid to do that. And Tom said what they would do, they would at the start of a game, they would watch a little bit, go out to his mother's house, eat Thanksgiving dinner, come back and catch the last part of the second game. Well, one time Bobby had to run a stop sign to get Tom to the gym in time to see about the last second or two of the game, keep his record alive. Otherwise, Jim Farrell would have been the only one that had seen a little bit of all 600 games. But it's incredible that thing lasted 29 years, and now it's been gone nearly 20 years. So
I didn't realize it. And then you didn't remember about Kim Mulkey. She did play there. I saw her. When I was a kid, I went to that game, to that tournament. I think they played there 2 years, I believe. So
might have. I just didn't remember her at the time, but when they were playing down at Tech, we'd go down to see Alicia play, and man, when they announced Alicia, the crowd really went wild. Well, Kim's wearing a champagne-colored outfit. Of course, she dresses to the nines, and she's up romping and stomping, and the referee runs by her, and I don't know what she said, but he turned around and buzzed her with a technical foul, and man, the crowd ate that up, But I was down there the night when Alicia was a sophomore against Miami and hit 9 threes, and
oh wow.
Man, then she beat Baylor on an inbounds pass. I guess that same game that Mulkey got the technical foul on an inbounds pass, and then she hit a mid-court shot nearly against Missouri one night. So she had some pretty amazing things. But the cameramen really loved Alicia because she's such a beautiful girl, and they like to watch her quite a bit.
I bet so. So why did they end the Queens Classic?
Oh, finally, more high schools were starting their own tournaments, and it was getting harder to get the college teams to come because when we started out, Wayland could beat Texas and Tech pretty regularly, and then when the NCAA started putting money into the programs, and that changed everything. But we had some great times during those times, and got to go to the Nationals. I got to broadcast from Pauley Pavilion at UCLA in '78. The Queens went to the Final Four, and that was pretty neat.
I remember that. So is Wayland an NAIA school?
Yeah, still NAIA. There'd been some talk about should they go to Division III, a non-scholarship program, but they've chosen to stay in the NAIA, and I think that's good. Now they're also part of it's called the National Christian College Association. So if they don't make the big tournament, the NAI, I think they can also qualify to go to a smaller tournament. So it's another opportunity at least to get to play some more ball games. But 4 years ago, but when COVID hit, the Queens were 31-3 or 31-1 maybe. And I thought they had a legitimate shot to win the national championship because they'd been in the semifinals, I think 2 years before that. Well, COVID hit, so we'll never know.
Oh, wow.
As well, those boys the boys didn't get to play state championships that year. The girls did, and then COVID hit, and the boys didn't get to play for the state. And then it wiped out baseball and all the spring sports.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's nice that Harley Redden's going to get to go into the Hall of Fame this year in Springfield, Missouri. It'll be in October. And of course, he won the John Bunn Award, but he never could make it to the hall on his own, But he is finally now, and that's long overdue because he died at 101 back in 2021.
Wow, that's incredible.
Well, you were a busy bee, Mr. Andrew. So let me mention some of the you were active in the community. You served as president of the Bulldog Booster Club. You were in the Chamber of Commerce, United Wayland, Salvation Army Advisory Committee, New Optimist Club, trustee for the Baptist Standard magazine for 17 years, president of the Panhandle Press Association, and serving on the Journalism Advisory Committee for Texas Tech and West Texas A&M. And you're currently serving in the Wayland Development Council. When did you have time for your wife?
Well, I had 2 naps today. As a matter of fact, I work part time. I work part time at a funeral home. I was going to do that for Cornerstone or Bartley in Plainview, and they never did call me. I got down here and have found a good ministry there. I've done about 25 funerals for people who don't have a pastor. In fact, I did 3 within 2 weeks, going back about 2 weeks ago. So it's been a good side deal. And I lead coaches outreach Bible study over at a couple of schools, and so one thing, Michael, I never learned to say no, and but I'm glad because I stay busy, and I tell people, and with all honesty, I have fun at everything I do. I mean, life is fun. So what you make it, and I like people and like to be around people, and so when people say, "Do you want to do this?" I say, "Yeah." Usually, I say, I did say no to somebody the other day. First time I think I maybe have ever said no in my life. Maybe not.
It's safe to assume that your wife has been super supportive of all your endeavors.
She is, and she has her own ministries, and she's involved in some things that keep her busy. But she came down here to be a grandmother, and we have plenty of time to do that. We have a grandson who's he'll be a senior wrestler next year. He went to state last 2 years. Not this last year because he tore up his labrum this year and missed half the season. And then our freshman granddaughter is going to be a varsity cheerleader as a freshman at Centennial High School. And then we have a 10-year-old who's a soccer player. And then we have 2 little boys over in Dallas who are 5 and 3, and they're playing. One of them's playing soccer and scored a couple of goals. His daddy's the coach, and then so we stay busy, but we have a good time. And made some wonderful friends down here, but we have wonderful friends in Plainview too, and miss them.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think staying busy is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Well, they talk about guys, I'll be 76 in October, and they talk about how people, worked all their lives and they retire, and some of them die pretty quickly because they just not do anything, and they kind of lost their way. And your whole life's not tied up in, what you do or your identity is, whatever. I was proud to be at the Herald, I was proud to be at Wayland, but you don't want to say, man, I can't function now that I'm not in those jobs. It's
right. I tell my clients all the time, if you're not moving, you're dying.
That's right. That's true.
That's exactly right. I mean, so move. You have to stay active and busy and have a passion for something, and really having a passion of service.
Yeah, that's right.
That looks like. And
now, are you a teacher?
I am a yoga teacher and personal trainer. So yes, I'm teaching people how to take care of their bodies.
That's good. I need your help. I need your help.
Yes. So I think it's really important.
Well, We've been on for about an hour and a half, Mr. Andrews. I
Isn't
mean,
that? Well, I tell you what,
yes.
guys, I'm honored that you'd ask, and I probably only told you about a third of the stories I know. So if you get hard up for another program, or call me. I'll be glad to help out or fill
Well,
in a pinch if somebody drops out. That'd be great.
That would,
well,
that would be
that would
wonderful.
be great. So let's sum up your years in Plainview.
Well, 68 years, from the time I was 9 months old till we moved in 2006, 17. We've been down here 7 years in September. And when I came down, I was still doing Wayland football. I had to drive back to Plainview 4 times. And somebody said, I thought y'all were moving. I said, we are, but I've committed to broadcast Wayland football. But I thought that 5.5 hour drive is a little taxing. I thought at my age, I don't want to have to commit to do that. But I loved it and had a great time doing Wayland sports. But anyway, then we moved down here and we've found another niche in Burleson, Texas. But who knows what the future,
Yeah.
you think I've told somebody, I said, your kids move off to Duluth, Minnesota, and you follow them, and you might wind up in some nursing home back in the corner where nobody knows you. But I'll always have all those old stories. They'll say, that old man's down there telling those stories again. We don't know anything about him. He wants to tell them. He wants to tell them,
Yeah.
Did your kids like growing up in Plainview?
Oh, yeah, and they were all athletes. None of them great athletes, but Brad, my youngest, played golf, and Brandon was a football player and played a little JV baseball, and then Kayla played JV basketball. And then she went to choir, and so they all played a little bit. And their mother wasn't an athlete, but their dad was a legend in his own mind, as they say.
So what year did your kids graduate?
Yeah, yeah. Brandon got out in 91. His team went to the playoffs. They were the 1989 team was 8-2 and didn't go to the playoffs. His team was 4-5-1 and did go to the playoffs. So that's just how the games fall. And then Kayla graduated in 97 and Brad in 2000. So and they all went to Wayland a while, and Brad got a degree at Wayland, and so we all have that tie. And so that's kind of where we've been.
That's wonderful.
And you're a Texas Ranger. You're a huge fan, correct?
I have my Corey Seager jersey now, and they were supposed to send me a World Series cap, but they didn't have. They ran out, so I just got a regular blue one. But yeah, I went and saw them play the other night. They beat Cleveland 4-0. A good game, But they like last night, 2-1. They can't get any offense going. But I love the Rangers. I thought when I came down here, I might even go to work out there at the ballpark, and because they hire a lot of senior adults. And I thought, no, I don't want to have to commit to that, even though it's only about a 25-minute drive from my house. But it's a beautiful ballpark and a lot of fun. And I've never seen the Cowboys since I've been down here. Never seen the Mavericks. Never seen the Stars. And so, but
my owners. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The owner of my company, his daughter works for us. Well, her husband, Darren Willman, works in the front office for the Texas Rangers.
Oh, really? That's great.
So yeah, he was there.
We didn't talk about Emily Jones, who's the field reporter. We went to a game last year, and she was just having to be passing through up close to where we came in. So I hollered at her. She came over and had her picture made with us. But I told her, I said, I sure would like to have breakfast or lunch with Tom Grieve, the former general manager who did TV baseball for a long time, or with Eric Nadel. And I got to interview Eric Nadel, 40 years ago when they were at the old stadium. And anyway, she never replied, so I've got to lean on her again and say, now, Emily, we're Plainview people. I need your help here. Bucket list kind of stuff,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you get that, give us a shout. We want to hear about it.
That's right. We'll do it.
Well, thank you, sir, Mr. Andrews.
You bet.
I appreciate you joining us. It was our honor.
All right.
Lisa,
and this will be on tomorrow night, huh?
Yes.
Probably as soon as I get the video, probably sometime tomorrow morning. But yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Night.
It's been wonderful, and seeing you after all these years, and
haven't changed a bit. It's just the white hair, like you, Lisa. We haven't changed a bit. We just have white hair.
That's exactly right. And we
Okay.
just need to really own it and be proud of it.
Proud of everybody.
Yes.
I went and got mine cut today, and by the way, Norman Wright, who was almost like my second daddy, one year I got my hair cut, and I got Mark Cano, the barber, to give me some of my hair, and I put it in a little baggie with a little ribbon on it. I said, Norman, who had quit wearing a toupee, I said, Norman, I want to give you something nobody else will give you for Christmas. So he got some of my hair.
Oh, that's cool.
All right.
I knew his son, John Wright, very well.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Good guys.
Yeah.
And of course, Walter was the choir director there for many, many years. And so, yeah. All right. You
All right,
guys be
sir.
careful. Thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night. Well,
Wow, what incredible stories. I could talk
absolutely.
hours and hours.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have him back a couple more times, probably. And that's he mentioned Phyllis Wall. I've reached out to her. I'm gonna reach out to her again. I mean, I'd love to have her on the show. She's a lot. I mean, she knows a lot of history. She's married to Clint Wall, which he mentioned that he pitched against Donnie Moore.
Right.
Again, I didn't know that a New York company bought the Herald back in the 70s. So
I knew they had, but I didn't realize it was that long ago. I thought it was like after we were already out of school. I didn't realize it was in the 70s.
Right.
Yeah, that would be great to have Phyllis on. I mean, it's so wonderful to hear what she's doing for Plainview, and I'd like
Yes.
to pick her brain about it for sure. Phyllis, if you listen to our show, please come on.
She does follow the show, so I'll mention her. I'll send her a PM again. But all right, Lisa, another great show. So
Yes.
we've got some others working right now, but no commitments yet, but we'll have them soon. But thank you again.
Thank you. And can I just do a plug-in for our upcoming gathering?
Yes.
Yeah, so a reminder, I've reposted it on our page and I've reached out to a lot of people, but on Saturday, June the 15th, we're going to be having a class of 83 gathering in Dallas at a suburb trophy club at a restaurant and bar called HG Supply Company in Trophy Club. So go to our class page and RSVP on the invitation, or send me a private message or text me, or however you want to reach out to me or to Michael, and please come. It's super casual, just hanging out. And if you didn't get to go to our reunion last year, this is a good opportunity to catch up with some classmates. So come join us. 6 o'clock, June 15th.
6 o'clock. Yes, ma'am. And I'm staying at the A-Loft there, so they've got great rates. So if you're coming from out of town, Derek D-Berry, hey, get a room at the A-Loft.
Yeah, it's a nice hotel and it's a close distance, right? Is it walking?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't know about walking. I don't know about that, but it's a trophy club. So
yeah. So very
okay.
Okay. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.
Peace and love. Peace and love. All right.